Part 3, Chapters 13 and 14 of Charles Rex by Ethel M. Dell. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. 13. The Truth. He went with careless tread, as his fashion was, whistling the gay air to which all England was dancing that season. His swarthy countenance wore the half-mischievous, half-amused expression with which it was his custom to confront and baffle the world at large. No one knew what lay behind that facile mask. Only the very few suspected that it hid aught beyond a genial wickedness of a curiously attractive type. His spurs rang upon the white stones, and Sheila Melrose, standing beside her father's car in the shadow of some buildings, turned sharply and saw him. Her face was pale, it had a strained expression. But it changed at sight of him. She regarded him with that look of frozen scorn which once she had flung him when they had met in the garish crowd at Valrosa. Bunny was stooping over the car, but he became aware of Saltash almost in the same moment, and stood up straight to face him. Sheila was pale, but he was perfectly white, and there were heavy drops of perspiration on his forehead. He looked full at Saltash with eyes of blazing accusation. Saltash's face never changed as he came up to the car. He ceased to whistle, but the old whimsical look remained. He seemed unaware of any tension. "Car all right?" he asked smoothly. "Can I lend a hand? The General is beginning to move." Sheila turned without a word and got into the car. Bunny neither moved nor spoke. He stood like a man paralyzed. It was Saltash who, with that royal air of amusing himself, stooped to the handle and started the engine. The girl at the wheel did not even thank him. She looked beyond. Only as he stood aside and the car slid forward, she turned stiffly to Bunny. "Good bye," she said. He made a jerky movement. Their eyes met for a single second. "You will write?" he said. His throat was working spasmodically, the words seemed to come with gigantic effort. She bent her head in answer, and passed between them through the white gate into the drive that led round to the house. Saltash turned with a lightning movement to Bunny. "Walk back with me and we can talk," he said. Bunny drew sharply back. The movement was one of instinctive recoil. But still no words came. He stood staring at Saltash, and he was trembling from head to foot. "Don't be an ass now," Saltash said, and his voice was oddly gentle, even compassionate. "You've stumbled on a mare's nest. It's all right. I can explain." Bunny controlled himself with a jerk. His face was like death, but he found his voice. "You can keep your damned lies to yourself," he said. "I've no use for them." The prod of a riding switch against his shoulder made him start as a spirited animal starts at the touch of a spur. But Saltash only laughed. "You'll fight me for that." "I wouldn't touch you," flung back Bunny. "Oh, wouldn't you?" The odd eyes mocked him openly. "Then you withdraw the insult, with apologies?" "Apologize? To you?" said Bunny. "Or fight," said Saltash. "I think that would do you more good than the other, but you shall decide." "I will do neither," said Bunny, and turned his back with the words. "I've done with you." "You're wrong," said Saltash. "You've got to face it, and you won't get the truth from anyone but me. That girl knows nothing, Bunny." His voice was suddenly curt, with that in it which very few ever heard. "Turn around. Do you hear? Turn round, damn you. I'll kick you if you don't." Bunny turned. It was inevitable. They stood face to face. Then Saltash, the mockery gone from his eyes, reached out abruptly and gripped him by the arm. His touch was electric. For that moment, only for that moment, he was dangerous. There was something of the spring of a tiger in his action. "You damn fool," he said, and he spoke between his teeth. "Do you suppose even I would play such a blackguard's game as that?" "Let me go," Bunny said through white lips. "Facts are facts." Saltash's hold did not slacken. "Where's Jake?" he said. "Jake's away." "Confound him, just when he's wanted." The ferocity died out of Saltash like the glow from cinders blown from a furnace. "Well, listen. I swear to you by all that is sacred that you are making a mistake. Sheila has told you a certain thing that is true, so far as it goes. But you've let your imagination run away with you. The rest is false." He spoke with an emphasis that carried weight, and Bunny was moved in spite of himself. His own fire died down. Saltash saw his advantage and pressed it. "If Jake were here he'd tell you I was speaking the truth, and you'd believe him. You're on a wrong scent. So far as I'm concerned you're welcome to follow it to blazes. I'm used to pleasantries of that sort from my friends. But I'm damned if I'll let that child be tripped for nothing. Do you hear, Bunny?" He shook the arm he gripped impatiently. "I'll see you in hell first." Bunny's mouth twisted with a painful effort to smile. "I'm in hell now," he said. "Why the devil did you listen?" said Saltash. "Look here, we've got to have this thing out. Send a man along with my horse and walk across the park with me." He had gained his point by sheer insistence, and he knew it. Bunny knew it also, and cursed himself for a weak fool as he moved to comply. With Saltash's blade through his heart, he yet could somehow find it possible to endure him. He went with him in silence, hating the magnetism he found it impossible to resist. They passed through the shrubberies that skirted the house, and so to the open down. Then, in his sudden fashion, crudely and vehemently, Saltash began his defence. "It's not my way," he said, "to give an answer to any man who questions, but you haven't stooped to question, so I tell you the truth. Sheila saw Toby working as a page at the Casino Hotel at Valrosa. That right?" "I thought so. It's the whole matter in a nutshell. I must have seen her too, but never noticed her till my last night in the place. Then I found Antonio hammering the poor little beggar out in the garden, and I stopped it. You'd have done the same. Afterwards, late that night, I went on board the yacht and found her down in the saloon, a stowaway. The yacht had started. I could have put back, but I didn't. You wouldn't have done either. She took refuge with me. I sheltered her. She came to me as a boy. I treated her as such." "You knew?" flung in Bunny. Saltash's grin flashed across his dark features, like a meteor through a cloudy sky, and was gone. "I suspected, mon ami, but I did not even tell myself." That part of him that was French, a species of volatile sentimentality, sounded in the words like the echo of a laugh in a minor key. "I made a valet of her. I suffered her to clean my boots and brush my clothes. I kept her in order, with this, upon occasion." He held up the switch he carried. "I don't believe it," said Bunny, bluntly. Saltash's shoulders went up. "You please yourself, mon cher. I'm telling you the truth. I treated her like a puppy. I was kind to her, but never extravagantly kind. But eventually I decided, that it was time to turn home. No game can last for ever. So we returned, and on our last night at sea we were rammed and sunk. Naturally that spoilt, or shall I say somewhat precipitated, my plans. We were saved, the two of us together. And then was started that scandalous report of the woman on the yacht." Again the laughter sounded in his voice. "You see, mon ami, how small a spark can start a conflagration. In self-defense I had to invent something, and I invented it quickly. I said she was Larpent's daughter. I wonder if you would have thought of that. You'd have done it if you had, I'll wager." He turned upon the boy, who strode in silence by his side with a gleam of triumph in his eyes, but there was no answering gleam in Bunny's. He moved heavily, staring straight before him, his face drawn in hard lines of misery. "Well," Saltash said, "that's all I have done. You now know the truth, simple and unadorned, as Sheila Melrose in her simplicity does not know it, and probably would not comprehend it if she did." "Leave her out of it," said Bunny, in a strangled voice. "It was the obvious conclusion." "Oh, the obvious." Cynicism undisguised caught up the word. "Only the young and innocent can ever really say with any conviction what is the obvious way of blackguards. You don't know it. Neither do I. A single decent impulse on the part of a blackguard can upset all the calculations of the virtuous. Oh, Bunny, you fool, what do you want to wreck things for at this stage? Can't you see you've got a gift from the gods? Take it, man, and be thankful that you're considered worthy of it." Bunny made a sharp movement of protest. Saltash was looking at him with half humorous compassion, as one looks at a child with a damaged toy, and he was keenly conscious of being at a disadvantage. But though checked, he was not defeated. Saltash had made out a case for himself. He had in a measure vindicated Toby. But that was not the end of the matter. He stopped and faced him. "Why were you so anxious for me to marry her?" he said. "I've got to know that." He was instantly aware that Saltash eluded him, even though he seemed to meet his look as he made reply. "You are quite welcome to know it, mon ami. I chance to take a fatherly interest in you both." Bunny flinched a little. Something in the light reply had pierced him, though he could not have said how. "That's all?" he asked rather thickly. "That is quite all," said Saltash, and faintly smiled, the smile of the practised swordsman behind the blade. Bunny stood for some moments regarding him, his boyish face stern and troubled. Up to that point, against his will, he had believed him. From it he believed him no longer. But he faced the truth however it might gall him. He was pitted against a skilled fencer, and he was powerless. Experience could baffle him at every turn. "Do you tell me you have never realized that she cared for you?" he blurted forth abruptly, and there was something akin to agony in his utterance of the words. He knew that he was baring his breast for the stroke as he forced them out. But Saltash did not strike. Just for an instant he showed surprise. Then, quite suddenly, he lowered his weapon. He faced Bunny with a smile of comradeship. "Quite honestly, Bunny," he said, "if I had realized it, it wouldn't have made any difference. I have no use for sentimental devotion at my age. She has never been more to me than a puppy that plays with your hand." "Ah," Bunny said, and swung away from him with the words, "I suppose that is how you treat them all. Women and dogs, they're very much alike." "Not in every respect," said Saltash. "I should say that Toby is an exception, anyway. She knows play from earnest." "Does she?" said Bunny. He paused a moment, as if trying to concentrate his forces, then he turned to Saltash again. "I'm going back now. I can't dine with you, though I've no desire to quarrel. But you see, you must understand, that I can never accept anything from you again. I'm sorry, but I can't." "What are you going to do?" said Saltash. Bunny hesitated, his boyish face a white mask of misery. Saltash reached out a second time and touched him lightly, almost caressingly, with the point of his switch. "What's the matter with you, Bunny?" he said. "Think I've lied to you?" Bunny met his look. "I don't want to quarrel with you," he said. Somehow it isn't worth it." "Thanks," said Saltash, and briefly laughed. "You place my friendship at a pretty high figure, then. Tell me what you're going to do." "What is it to you what I do?" A quick gleam shone for an instant in Bunny's eyes, dispelling the look of stricken misery. "I'm not asking you to help me." "I've grasped that," said Saltash. "But even so, I may be able to lend a hand. As you say, there is not much point in our quarreling. There's nothing to quarrel about that I can see, except that you've called me a liar for no particular good reason. Do you object to that?" said Bunny. Saltash made a careless gesture. "Perhaps, as you say, it isn't worth it. All the same, I've a certain right to know what you propose to do, since I gather I have not managed to satisfy you." "A right?" flashed Bunny. "Yes, a right." Saltash's voice was suddenly and suavely confident. "You may forget, or possibly you may remember, that I gave my protection to Nanette on the day she came to me for it, and I have never withdrawn it since. What matters to her matters to me." "I see." Bunny stood stiffly facing him. "I am responsible to you, am I?" "That is what I am trying to convey," said Saltash. The fire in Bunny's eyes leapt high for a moment or two, then died down again. Had Jake been his opponent he would have flung an open challenge, but somehow Saltash, with whom he had never before striven in his life, was less easy to resist. In some subtle fashion he seemed able to evade resistance and yet to gain his point. He gained his point on this occasion. Almost before he knew it, Bunny had yielded. "I am going to her," he said, "to ask her for the whole truth about her past." "Is any woman capable of telling the truth to that extent?" questioned Saltash. "I shall know if she doesn't," said Bunny doggedly. "And will that help?" The note of mockery that was never long absent from his voice sounded again. "Isn't it possible, sometime, to try to know too much? There is such a thing as looking too closely, mon ami, and then we pay the price." "Do you imagine I could ever be satisfied not knowing?" said Bunny. Saltash shrugged his shoulders. "I merely suggested that you are going the wrong way to satisfy yourself. But that is your affair, not mine. The gods have sent you a gift, and because you don't know what it is made of you are going to pull it to pieces to find out. And presently you will fling it away because you cannot fit it together again. You don't realize, you never will realize, that the best things in life are the things we never see and only dimly understand." A vein of sincerity mingled with the banter in his voice, and Bunny was aware of a curious quality of reverence, of something sacred in a waste place. It affected him oddly. Convinced though he was that in one point at least Saltash had sought to deceive him, it yet influenced him very strongly in Saltash's favour. Against his judgment, against his will even, he saw him as a friend. "Do you mean to tell me," he said, speaking slowly, his eyes upon the swarthy, baffling countenance, "that you have never even tried to know where she came from, what she is?" Saltash made a quick gesture as of remonstrance. "Mon ami, the last I have always known. The first I have never needed to know." "Then," Bunny spoke with difficulty, but his look never wavered, "tell me, as before God, tell me what you believe her to be." "What I know her to be," corrected Saltash. "I will tell you, certainly. She is a child who has looked into hell, but she is still a child." "What do you mean?" questioned Bunny. Saltash's eyes, one black, one grey, suddenly flashed a direct challenge into his own. "I mean," he said, "that the flame has scorched her, but it has never actually touched her." "You know that?" Bunny's voice was hoarse. There was torture in his eyes. "Man, for God's sake, the truth." "It is the truth," Saltash said. "How do you know it? You've no proof. How can you be sure?" He could not help the anguish of his voice. The words fell harsh and strained. "How do I know it?" Saltash echoed the words sharply. "What proof? Bunny, you fool, do you know so little of the world, of women, as that? What proof do you need? Just look into her eyes." A queer note of passion sounded in his own voice, and it told Bunny very clearly that he was grappling with the naked truth at last. It arrested him in a moment. He suddenly found that he could go no further. There was no need. Impulsively, with an inarticulate word of apology, he thrust out his hand. Saltash's came to meet it in a swift, hard grip. "Enough?" he asked with that odd, smiling grimace of his that revealed so little. And, "Yes, enough," Bunny said, looking him straight in the face. They parted almost without words a few minutes later. There was no more to be said. 14. The Last Card. Saltash dined alone that night. He was in a restless mood and preoccupied, scarcely noticing what was put before him, pushing the wine away untasted. In the end he rose from the table almost with a gesture of disgust. "I'm going to smoke on the ramparts," he said to the decorous butler who waited upon him. "If anyone should call to see me, let them wait in the music room." "Very good, my lord. And where would you like to take coffee?" inquired the man sedately. Saltash laughed. "Not on the ramparts," emphatically. "I'll have mercy on you to that extent. Put it on the spirit lamp in the music room, and leave it. You needn't sit up, any of you. I'll put out the lights." "Very good, my lord." The man withdrew, and Saltash chose a cigar. An odd grimace drew his features as he lighted it. He had the look of a man who surveys his last card and knows himself a loser. Though he went out of the room and up the great staircase to the music room with his head up and complete indifference in his carriage, his eyelids were slightly drawn. He did not look as if he had enjoyed the game. A single red lamp lighted the music room, and the long apartment looked dim and ghostly. He stood for a moment as he entered it and looked round, then with a scarcely perceptible lift of the shoulders, He passed straight through to the curtain that hung before the door leading to the turret. The darkness of the place gaped before him, and he turned back with a muttered word and recrossed the room. There were Persian rugs upon the floor, and his feet made no sound. He went to the mantelpiece, and, feeling along it, found a small electric torch. The light of it flared before him as he returned. The door yielded to his touch and swung shut behind him. He passed into vault-like silence. The stone steps gave back the sound of his tread as he mounted, with eerie wandering echoes. The grey walls glimmered with a ghostly desolation around him. Half-way up, he stopped to flick the ash from his cigar, and laughed aloud. But the echoes of his laughter sounded like voices crying in the darkness. He went on more swiftly, like a phantom imprisoned and seeking escape. The echoes met him and fell away behind him. The loneliness was like a curse. The very air felt dead. He reached the top of the turret at last, and the heavy door that gave upon the ramparts. With a sound that was almost a gasp, he pushed it open and passed out into the open air. A full moon was shining, and his acres lay below him, a wonderful picture in black and silver. He came to the first gap in the battlements, mounted the parapet, and stood there with a hand resting on each side. The wash of the sea came murmurously through the September silence. His restless eyes flashed hither and thither over the quiet scene, taking in every detail, lingering nowhere. The pine trees stirred in the distance below him, seeming to whisper together, and an owl hooted with a weird persistence down by the lake. It was like the calling of a human voice, almost like a cry of distress. Then it ceased, and the trees were still again. The spell of the silence fell like the falling of a curtain. The loneliness crept about his heart. He took the cigar from his mouth and spoke ironically, grimly. "There is your kingdom, Charles Rex," he said. He turned with the words and leaped down upon the narrow walk between the battlements. The owl began to call again, but the desolation remained. He paced forward with his hands behind him, his head bent. No one could see him here. The garment of mockery could be flung aside. He was like a prisoner tramping the stone walls from which he could never escape. He paused once to toss away his cigar, but he did not look out again over the fair prospect of his lands. He was looking at other things, seeing the vast emptiness of a life that had never been worth while stretching behind and before him. Like a solitary traveller pausing in the heart of the desert, he stood to view the barrenness around him. He had travelled far, had pursued many a quest with ardour, but the ardour had all gone out of him now. Only the empty solitude remained. He had lived a life of fevered variety, he had drunk deep of many waters, but he had never been satisfied. And now it seemed to him that all he had ever looked upon, all he had ever achieved, was mirage. Nothing of all that he had ever striven for was left. The fruit had turned to ashes in his mouth, and no spring remained whereat to quench his thirst. Perhaps few men have ever realized the utter waste of wickedness as Charles Rex realized it that night. He met it whichever way he turned. To gratify the moment's whim had ever been his easy habit. If a generous impulse had moved him, he had gratified that also. But it had never been his way to sacrifice himself, until a certain night when a child had come to him, wide-eyed and palpitating like a driven bird, and had sought shelter and protection at his hands. That, very curiously, had been the beginning of a new era in his life. It had appealed to him as nothing had ever appealed before. He had never tasted, or even desired, the Dead Sea fruit again. Something had entered his being on that night which he had never been able to cast out, and all other things had been dwarfed to insignificance. He faced the fact as he paced his castle walls. The relish had gone out of his life. He was gathering what he had sown, and the harvest was barren indeed. Time passed. He walked, unheeding. If he spent the whole night on the ramparts there was no one to know or care. It was better than tossing sleepless under a roof. He felt as if a roof would suffocate him. But sheer physical weariness began to oppress even his elastic frame at last. He awoke to the fact that he was dead tired. He sat down in an embrasure between the battlements, and drifted into the numb state between waking and sleeping in which visions are born. For a space nothing happened, then quite suddenly, rising as it were out of a void, a presence entered his consciousness, reached and touched his spirit. Intangibly, but quite unmistakably, he was aware of the summons, of a voice that spoke within his soul. He lifted his head and looked about him. Emptiness, stark emptiness, was all he saw. Yet, in a moment, as though a hand had beckoned, he arose. Without a backward glance he traversed the distance that lay between him and the turret door. He went through it into utter darkness, and in utter darkness began the descent. A shaft of moonlight smote through a slit in the stone wall as he rounded the corner of the stair. It lay like a shining sword across his path, and for a second he paused. Then he passed over it, sure-footed and confident, and plunged again into the darkness. When he reached the end of the descent he was breathing heavily, and his eyes were alight with a strange fire. He pulled upon the door and put aside the thick curtain with the swift movements of a man who can brook no delay. He passed into the long dim room beyond, with its single red lamp burning at the far end. He prepared to pass on to the door that led out upon the gallery and so to the grand staircase. But before he had gone half a dozen paces he stopped. It was no sound that arrested, no visible circumstance of any sort. Yet, as if at a word of command, he halted. His quick look swept around the room like the gleam of a rapier, and suddenly he swung upon his heel, facing that still red light. Seconds passed before he moved again. Then swiftly and silently he walked up the room. Close to the lamp was a deep settee on which the spots of a leopard skin showed in weird relief. At one end of the settee, against the leopard skin, something gold was shining. Saltash's look was fixed upon it as he drew near. He reached the settee, treading noiselessly. He stood beside it, looking down. And over his dark face, with its weary lines and cynical mouth, its melancholy and its bitterness, there came a light such as neither man nor woman had ever seen upon it before. For there, before him, curled up like a tired puppy, her tumbled golden hair lying in ringlets over the leopard skin, was Toby, asleep in the dim red lamplight. For minutes he stood and gazed upon her before she awoke. For minutes that strange glory came and went over his watching face. He did not stir, did not even seem to breathe. But the fact of his presence must have pierced her consciousness at last, for in the end, quite quietly, supremely naturally, the blue eyes opened and fixed upon him. "Hello," said Toby sleepily. "Time to get up." And then, in a moment, she had sprung upright on the couch, swift dismay on her face. I thought we were on the yacht. I never meant to go to sleep here. I came to speak to you, sir. I wanted to see you." He put a restraining hand upon her thin young shoulder, and his touch vibrated as with some unknown force controlled. "All right, Nonette," he said, and his voice had the same quality. It was reassuring but oddly unsteady. "Sorry I kept you waiting." She looked at him. Her face was quivering. "I've had a hell of a time," she said pathetically. "Been here hours. Thought you'd never come. Your man said I wasn't to disturb you." "Damn the fool!" said Saltash. She broke into a breathless laugh. That's just what I said. But I thought perhaps you'd rather I waited." She shivered suddenly. "I don't like this place. Can you take me somewhere else?" He bent lower, put his hand under her elbow and helped her to her feet. She came up from the couch with a spring and stood before him, half daring and half shy. Saltash kept his hold upon her arm and turned her towards the wall beside the tall mantelpiece. She went with him readily enough, watching, eager-eyed, as he stretched his free hand up to the oak panelling. "Now I'm going to find out all your secrets," she said boyishly. "Not quite all," said Saltash. There came the click of a spring, and the panel slid to one side, leaving a long narrow opening before them. Toby glanced up at him, and with a small nestling movement slipped within the circle of his arm. It tightened upon her in an instant, and she laughed again, a quivering, exultant laugh. "I'm glad you've come," she said. They paused on the edge of darkness, but there was no hesitation about Toby. She was all athrill with expectancy. Then, in a flash, the room before them was illuminated, and they entered. It was a strange chamber, panelled, built in the shape of a cone. A glass dome formed its roof, and there was no window besides. The lights were cunningly concealed behind a weirdly coloured fresco of Oriental figures. But one lamp alone on a small table burned with a still red glow. This lamp was supported on the stuffed skin of a hooded cobra. Toby's eyes were instantly drawn towards it. They shone with excitement. Again she glanced up at the man beside her. "What a wonderful place!" "Better than the music room?" suggested Saltash. "Oh, yes, far better." Her shining eyes sought his. "It might be your cabin on the yacht." He stretched a hand behind him, and again the spring clicked. Then he drew her forward. They trod on tiger skins. Everywhere were tiger skins, on the floor and on a deep low settee by the table which was the only other furniture the room possessed. Toby was clinging to the arm that held her, clinging very closely. There was unspoken entreaty in her hold. For there was something about Saltash at the moment, something unfamiliar and unfathomable, that frightened her. His careless drollery, his two-edged ironies were naught to her, but his silence was a barrier unknown that she could not pass. She could only cling voicelessly to the support he had not denied her. He brought her to the settee and stood still. His face was strangely grim. "Well, Toby," he said. She twisted in his hold and faced him, but she kept his arm wound close about her, her hand tight gripped on his. "Are you angry with me for coming?" she asked him quiveringly. "I had to come." He looked down into her eyes. "Bien, petite. Then you need a friend?" he said. Her answering look was piteous. "I need you," she said. One of the old gay smiles flashed across his face. He seemed to challenge her to lightness. The grimness went out of his eyes like a shadow. "And so you have come, my mignonette, at the dead of night, at the risk of your reputation and mine." Toby made an excruciating grimace and broke impulsively in upon him. "It wasn't the dead of night when I started. I've been waiting hours hours. But it doesn't matter. I've found you at last. And you can't send me away now, like you did before, because well, I've no one to go to. You might have done it if you'd come down earlier. But you can't do it now." Her voice thrilled on a high note of triumph. "You've got to keep me now. I've come to stay." "What?" said Saltash. He bent towards her, looking closely into her face. "Got to keep you, have I? What's that mean? Has Bunny been a brute to you? I could have sworn I'd made him understand." She laughed in answer. "Bunny? I didn't wait to see him." "What?" Saltash said again. She reached up a quick nervous hand and laid it against his breast. Her eyes, wide and steadfast, never flinched from his. "I've come to stay," she repeated. And then, after a moment, "It's all right. I left a note behind for Bunny. I told him I wasn't going back." He caught her hand tightly into his. His hold was drawing her, and she yielded herself to it, still with that quivering laughter that was somehow more eloquent than words, more piteous than tears. Saltash spoke below his breath. "What am I going to do with you?" he said. Her arms reached up to him suddenly. Perhaps it was that for which she had waited. "You're going to keep me this time," she told him tremulously. "Oh, why did you ever send me away, when I belonged to you, and to no one else? You meant to give me my chance. What chance have I of anything but hell and damnation away from you? No, listen. Let me speak. Hear me first." She uttered the words with passionate insistence. "I'm not asking anything of you, only to be with you. I'll be to you whatever you choose me to be, always, always. I will be your valet, your slave, your plaything. I will be the dust under your feet. But I must be with you. You understand me. No one else does. No one else ever can."
"Are you sure you understand yourself?" Saltash said.
His arms had closed about her. He was holding her in a vital clasp. But his restless look did not dwell upon her. It seemed rather to be seeking something beyond. Toby's hands met and gripped each other behind his neck. She clung to him with an almost frenzied closeness. "You can't send me away," she told him brokenly. "If you do, I shall die. And I'm asking such a little, such a very little."
"You don't know what you're asking, child," he said.
And though he held her fast pressed to him, his voice had the sombre ring of a man who battles with misgiving. "You have never known. That's the hell of it." "I do know," she flung back almost fiercely. "I know all I need to know of most things. I know very well," her breath came quickly, but still her eyes remained upraised, "what would have happened, what was bound to happen, if the yacht had never gone down. I wasn't afraid then. I'm not now. You're the only man on this earth that I'd say it to. I hate men, most men. But to you a sudden sob caught her voice. She paused to steady it. "To you, I just want to be whatever you're needing most in life. And when I can't be that to you any longer, I'll just drop out, as I promised, and you shall never know a thing about it. That I swear." His look came swiftly to her. The blue eyes were swimming in tears. He made a sudden gesture as of capitulation, and the strain went out of his look. His arms tightened like springs about her. He spoke lightly, jestingly. "Bien. Shall I tell you what you shall be to me, mignonne?" he said, and smiled down at her with his royal air of confidence. She trembled a little and was silent, realizing that he had suddenly leapt to a decision, fearing desperately what that decision might be. His old baffling mask of banter had wholly replaced the sombreness, but she was aware of a force behind it that gripped her irresistibly. She could not speak in answer. "I will tell you," he said, and his dark face laughed into hers with a merriment half mischievous, half kindly. "I am treading the path of virtue, mignonne, and uncommon lonely I'm finding it. You shall relieve the monotony. We will be virtuous together, for a while. You shall be my wife." He stooped with the words, and ere she knew it, his lips were on her own. But his kiss, though tender, was as baffling as his smile. It was not the kiss of a lover. She gasped and shrank away. "Your wife? You're joking. How could I be your wife?"
"You and none other," he declared gaily. "Egad, it's the very thing for us. Why did I never think of it before? I will order the state coach at once. We will go to town, elope and be married before the world begins to buzz. What are you frightened at, sweetheart? Why this alarm? Wouldn't you rather be my wife than the dust beneath my feet?"
I don't know," faltered Toby, and hid her face from the dancing raillery in his eyes. His hold was close and sheltering, but he laughed at her without mercy. "Does the prospect make you giddy? You will soon get over that. You will take the world by storm, mignonne. You will be the talk of the town." "Oh no," breathed Toby. "No, I couldn't."
"What?" he jested. "You are going to refuse my suit?"
She turned and clung to him with a passionate, even fierce intensity, but she did not lift her face again to his. Her voice came muffled against his breast. "I could never refuse you anything."
"Eh bien! Then all is well," he declared. "My bride will hold her own wherever she goes, save with her husband, and to him she will yield her wifely submission at all times. Do you know what they will say, all of them, when they hear that Charles Rex is married at last?"
"What?" whispered Toby apprehensively. He bent his head, still laughing.
"Shall I tell you? Can't you guess?"
"No, tell me," she said. He touched the soft ringlets of her hair with his lips.
"They will say, 'God help his wife,' mignonne. And I shall answer, 'Amen.'"
She lifted her face suddenly and defiantly, her eyes afire. "Do you know what I shall say if they do?" she said. "What?" said Saltash, his own eyes gleaming oddly. "I shall tell them," said Toby tensely, "to go to blazes." He grimaced his appreciation. "Then they will begin to pity the husband, chérie." She held up her lips to his, childishly, lovingly. "I will be good," she said. "I will be good. I will never say such things again." He kissed the trembling lips again, lightly, caressingly. "Oh, don't be too good," he said. "I couldn't live up to it. You shall say what you like, do what you like, and you shall be my queen." She caught back another sob. Her clinging arms tightened. "And you will be what you have always been," she said. "My king, my king, my king." In the silence that followed the passionate words, Charles Rex very gently loosened the clinging arms, and set her free. End of Part 3, Chapters 13 and 14.